What's up everyone? Thanks for tuning in today. Today we're going to go over vacuum forming. The reason why we wanted to create this video is because we recently made some masks and we had to vacuum form the lenses for the eyes. Now this is our first experience in doing any type of vacuum forming, and there was definitely a learning curve involved. I've never done anything like this, so I thought I would share some of the things that we learned along the way, and hopefully it can help you out. We'll go through each step of the process that we did, along with the tools required and how much money we paid for the different items. First, I'd like to start off with the toaster oven. This is just a general toaster oven that we purchased from an estate sale. We paid $20 for it. And the reason why we chose this is because whenever I'd watched some videos online of how to do this process, they mentioned that you could use one of these. I knew that I could find a used one either at a Goodwill or an estate sale, garage sale for next to nothing, so I figured I would go from there. You could also purchase one new if you'd like online. If you have a used one sitting around, you could use it. The only thing to take caution of is you do not want to use this for personal use afterwards. So if you use this to do vacuum forming, the plastic that you use will let off odors inside of here, and it's not a good idea to cook in it afterwards. So I would recommend getting something used that you're not going to use for anything else, or if you plan on doing this a lot, maybe you want to buy it specifically for the vacuum forming and not for cooking. Having said that, another thing to take into consideration, don't do what I did. What I did was I just found this, bought it. It was only $20, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But the first thing you want to pay attention to is how big your mold is. Now we'll get to our molds in a second, but just to show you, this is the mold that we use to make our eye lens and our mask. Now, what you should do first is look at the mold you're going to make, measure how big it is, and measure how big of a plate you're going to have to put it on. Then you can figure out whether or not your toaster is going to have enough room to accommodate it inside. If it's not, then you should get a larger one. They sell numerous different sizes of these things. The one that we have here is relatively small. If you'll see here, we have this tray that came with it, and also this little metal rack. Now I had to make some modifications to these. You'll see in a video here in a few moments. And the reason why we did that, for one thing, the tray itself, we need to put our frames in. And I'll show you the frames, but we needed this to be able to put inside to heat it up. Unfortunately, with the way this is made, there's these little ridges here, but it won't support this tray very well by itself. It just falls, as you can see, and it doesn't sit flat. So, what I did was, I went through and I cut all of the little grills that go across this frame. That way I could just put this inside and use it only to support the tray. The tray has a hole cut out inside, and this is because whenever you heat the plastic that's sitting on here, you're going to heat it up to the point to where that plastic starts to melt. And what it'll do is it'll droop down on the inside. I don't know a specific science or time to this. This is going to be something that you're going to have to figure out on your own as you're using it. The more experience, the more times you do it, the better you'll get at it. But basically you're just going to turn your oven on, and what we use is the toast setting on dark, and as it goes down you just turn it back up. But the reason why is because it gets hotter in this section here. But you'll just keep an eye on this. And as you start to see that plastic drooping down, then you know you need to take it out. Again, how far down you want it to droop, that's going to be your decision. But what I will tell you is if you pull it out too soon and you try to drape it down over your mold, if it's not melted enough, then you're not going to get it to stretch and form to the mold correctly. As well, you don't want it to be hanging down too much and too loose, because then whenever you try to pull everything out, you could risk hitting something and then destroying your piece of plastic. So you're going to have to find that fine line. We had a lot of errors in doing this. I'll show you the sheets that we used in a moment, and we ended up buying a number of these sheets because we had some issues along the way from learning how to do this. But now that we've did it a few times, it's pretty straightforward. Now, if you happen to buy one similar to this, a couple things I will say. If you can see here, this is a catch that was originally vertical, and the idea was whenever you would open this door up, the catch would hook onto this little metal grill and pull everything out. Well, I decided to bend this down so that it wouldn't do that. And the reason why was because the plastic is going to be hanging down in the middle, I didn't want a chance me pulling this out and that plastic hitting something. So what we do is, and we'll get into the frame in a moment, but this is the frames that we made for this. The frames sit inside of here like this. Now they will be hooked together, but they just sit here like this. So the plastic sheet is going to be in between these two frames, right in between here, and you're going to see that start to sag down. So once it starts sagging down, what we did was we used a pair of pliers, and we just grabbed a hold of it, lifted it up so that the plastic wouldn't hit anything, and then pulled it out. Up, there's no issue because you're not gonna, the plastic's hanging down, it's not gonna hit nothing. So you can just lift it up and then pull it out. Then once we had it out, we were able to drape this down over top, and I'll show you how we do that in a minute, and then do the vacuum forming. I just wanted to show you though first, kind of an in and out for this thing, because again, you need to make sure you know how big the mold is before you buy this. You're very limited by space in here, and once you know the size of your mold, all you have to do is look at this tray that comes with these, or even the grill if it don't have a tray, whichever it is, and measure the size. Basically, if you can't fit it within this dimension here, whatever that is for your mold, if you're not going to be able to fit it on the inside of that tray, it's not big enough. You're going to have to go bigger. You may have something that's too big. If that's the case, then you're going to have to go a whole different route. But for smaller parts like what we've got here, this will work just fine. You just need to make sure that you've got the right size. So now we'll go in, we'll show you what we did to cut the middle of this out and go from there.
The bottom of the tray had a ridge that went around the outside. I started by drilling a hole inside of each corner on the bottom inside of the ridge. Afterwards, I used a step bit to enlarge the hole to a size large enough to fit the blade of my jigsaw inside. Once the holes were big enough, I used my jigsaw to cut around the inside perimeter of the ridge and remove the bottom of the tray. Off screen, I used a file to remove the sharp burrs that the jigsaw had left. You could use other tools to cut the bottom of the tray, but I thought this would be the easiest for me.
Now onto the frame. You notice we have two frames here, a top and a bottom. We made these using 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch aluminum angle. We purchased these at Menards. I'll put a link to on the video to the material itself. You're also going to need these little corner brackets and some hardware. The corner brackets came with hardware, however the hardware had a pan head and we needed a countersunk head so that everything would sit flush on this side. I'll also put a link in the description for a countersunk head bit in case you don't have one. One thing to take into consideration when it comes to countersinking, they make different degrees, different angles of countersunk heads. So what I would recommend is if you already have a countersunk head bit, then take it with you, and whenever you're picking out a screw, set it up next to it and see if the angle of the head of the countersunk screw matches up with the angle of the counter bit. If it doesn't, then find a screw that will, or buy a different countersunk head. Otherwise, whenever you try to drill this out and get your head to sit flush, it's not going to. So just a little pointer there. But I'll put a link to a countersunk head bit in the description so you can see what it is. It's up to you whether you want to buy that one or not. And it would depend on whether or not that one would actually work for your hardware, but just so you can get an idea of what it is and what kind of price you're looking at. We also purchased the hardware here. I believe these are 832 countersunk head screws, and they're 1/2 inch long. I did that because I didn't want them to be sticking out further than the frame itself. Keep in mind that the bottom part here is going to set down in that tray, so if anything was sticking out further, it may end up sitting it one way or the other and not be level. So these are 1/2 inch so that they don't stick out further than the frame itself. And then we just use some nuts. You could also put on lock washers if you want. I didn't think it was necessary for what we're doing here, but you could do that as well if you want. So we bought a couple packs of these corners. We'll put a link in the description to those. And we also bought the aluminum angle here and the hardware. The aluminum angle came in 36-inch pieces. We ended up needing 3 of them to do these frames. The frames themselves measure 7 inches by 9.5 inches. That's outside to outside. And we ended up needing 3 pieces to do that. They cost $4.18 a piece, which came to a total of $12.54 for the aluminum angle. The corners themselves came in at $2.69 a pack, and we bought 2 packs of them, so we're at $5.38 for these aluminum corners. The hardware, I'm not sure what it cost, I don't remember, but it was a couple dollars. We could say worst case scenario $5. It wasn't that much, but we'll just say $5 for the sake of it in this video. And then a countersunk bit's going to cost you around $3. The better one you buy, the more you're going to pay. But for a general one, probably going to pay around $3. I think the one that I looked at on Menards that I'm going to put on the posting was $3.29. So we've got these 2 frames. What the idea was, we cut them at 45s, drilled our holes, and then put them together. So what we're going to do here is clamp these together with the sheet inside and then put it in the oven. Right now, we'll get into the making of the frames.
I used my miter saw to cut each side of the frame at a 45-degree angle. After cutting the sides, I used a file to clean the burrs on the edges to ensure a good fit. I used my square to make sure the side corners were joined correctly when marking them to drill the holes for the corner brackets. I wrote a number on each side corner to make sure that they would go together correctly after drilling the holes. After drilling the holes, I used a countersink bit to allow the screw heads to sit flush in the frame. Once all the sides were drilled and countersunk, I was able to finish the assembly of the frame sides. Note, you can use a square to help align the holes during assembly. With both sides assembled, I laid both of them on top of each other to make sure that they would lay flat.